It was 12:30 p.m. on January 15, 1919. The day a wave of molasses hit Boston, not the Atlantic Ocean. In a split second, a 5-story industrial tank holding 2 million gallons of thick, crude syrup exploded. It released a 25-foot tidal wave, not of water, but of sugar, moving at an estimated 35 miles per hour. This was 13,000 tons of crushing, suffocating weight. When it hit, it didn't flow. It killed. It peeled buildings from their foundations, twisted steel elevated train tracks like ribbons, and instantly drowned 21 people and over 150 injured, all in a substance you put on your pancakes. This is the unbelievable story of the Great Molasses Flood, and how corporate negligence turned a simple sweet treat into a deadly, sticky apocalypse. Looming over the north end was the source of the disaster, a massive, poorly constructed tank owned by the Purity Distilling Company. To understand the scale of the risk, you have to understand the molasses itself. This wasn't food-grade syrup. It was raw, dark cane molasses imported from the Caribbean, destined to be fermented into industrial alcohol. This alcohol was critical. It was used to manufacture explosives and munitions for the war, and later for the rising demand for rum and other spirits, a business the owners were desperate to keep moving quickly. The tank was filled to bursting, storing a profit that the company refused to wait for. Locals knew the tank was a structural joke. It leaked constantly, weeping molasses from its seams. Residents of the neighborhood would even bring buckets and pails to collect the sticky runoff. The company simply painted the outside brown to hide the rusty damage and ignored the warning signs. Reports of loud groaning noises coming from the structure were dismissed as mere expansion noises. And so, on that unseasonably warm January afternoon, the pressure became too much. The sound that began around 12:30 p.m. was horrifying. It was not a simple rupture. It was a deep, resonating boom, followed by the sound of what witnesses later described as 1,000 machine guns firing at once, the noise of thousands of steel rivets tearing themselves loose and rocketing through the air. The massive steel plates of the tank tore apart, and the 2.3 million gallons of crude syrup was catastrophically unleashed. The wave erupted, dark and monstrous, carrying with it not only the liquid but the heavy, shrapnel-like steel of the tank itself. Its first victim was the elevated Atlantic Avenue Railway. The sheer force of the impact sheared the bolts from the tracks, twisting the massive steel girders like soft wire and nearly tearing a passing train from its elevated position. The current then slammed into Engine 31, the local fire station, smashing the building into rubble and trapping an entire squad of firefighters beneath the wreckage. Horses tethered to wagons were swallowed instantly, their desperate whinnies abruptly silenced as the immense pressure crushed their bodies. But the true drawn-out horror began after the wave passed. The molasses, warm from the industrial process, quickly met the cold January air and began to congeal. It didn't drain away. It settled, filling the streets 2 to 3 feet deep and rapidly thickening into a tenacious, powerful adhesive. The air, once sweet, was now suffocating, a dense, sickeningly sweet blanket that clung to the throat. People who had survived the initial blast were now trapped, stuck fast to the cobblestones. Rescuers, firefighters, and naval cadets struggled against a medium they could not fight. They were wading through heavy, sucking mire, forced to move in slow motion as the molasses pulled at their boots. Every step was a battle. They followed muffled cries for help, trying to dig and pull victims from the brown sludge, only to find the bodies often too deeply entombed to save in time. It took 4 days just to find all 21 bodies, many so encased in the sugary shell that they were unrecognizable. The ensuing legal battle was monumental. Families of the victims and the injured filed over 120 separate lawsuits against United States Industrial Alcohol. The company, determined to avoid responsibility, mounted a preposterous defense. They tried to blame the disaster on an anarchist bomb planted by disgruntled workers, or even a sudden shift in temperature that caused an explosion. They dragged the proceedings out for years, but the investigation was relentless. An auditor appointed by the Massachusetts Supreme Court meticulously studied the tank's construction. He proved, beyond a doubt, that the builders had skimped on construction and that the company had ignored repeated, obvious leaks. The final ruling established a groundbreaking legal precedent. For the first time in Massachusetts history, a corporation was held directly responsible for a major industrial disaster. The event forced city planners to finally enact mandatory professional engineering review and safety regulations for major construction projects. While the courts finally brought justice, the sticky cleanup lasted for months, and the sickly sweet odor of fermented molasses reportedly lingered over the North End for decades. A permanent, sickening memory of the day a simple dessert ingredient turned into a swift and brutal killer. The molasses flood is a reminder that history's greatest tragedies often come from human arrogance, not just nature. What's the strangest historical disaster you've ever heard of? Let us know in the comments. If you found this bizarre story compelling, please like this video and subscribe for more overlooked historical nightmares. Thanks for watching.